All right, we have two new expansion sides in the NWSL this year, Bay FC and Utah Royals. Let's start with Bay FC in the California Bay Area. Their head coach is Albertine Montoya. He started this group with their expansion draft, started signing new players. It's hard to say, hey, they've got new players and this is who they've lost because, hey, it's a brand new expansion side. Darian, what are the expectations, A, for an expansion side, but B, specifically Bay FC in the NWSL with 14 teams?
I think Bay is coming out to win. They're not, I think they're, watch the blueprint of San Diego and how they came into the NWSL hot and came to win with the expectation of this team being one of the best. You can see with Coach Albertine Montoya, he's coached me in my youth career. Amazing coach. His style of play is great. He's ultra attacking. The acquisitions they've gotten, Asisa Ashwala, Cambros, Castellanos. There's so many players just in their attack that shows that's the type of team that they're going to be. They're going to come and score goals. And I think the style of play that he wants, he's acquired players that fit this sort of Spanish style that's very possession based. It's going to be beautiful, ultra attacking. The question marks maybe for Bay are going to be the defense, the transitions when you play against teams that are going to prey on that. But I'm excited. This team has a huge expectation coming out. Just even the ownership, it's full of winners. These people are champions. Mm-hmm. They're not developing a team that's just here to make their first mark in the NWSL. No, they're coming to win and really prove themselves. I think this opening weekend, it's going to be huge. And I can't wait to see how this team comes out and plays because they're also going to be up there for me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I love that we saved the two expansion sides for last when it came to previewing them, because I think when it came to building things out over the course of their off season, that was it. We saw the horses are out the gate, who's pulling ahead, and Utah appeared to go ahead and kind of stack up on their players, but seems like Bay have not only caught up, but I really, really, really like the players that they have brought on board. Specifically, the international players are the ones who are standing out for me. I would say at one point during their off season, it almost felt like it was veering towards underwhelming just because of how this franchise arrived to NWSL. With their founding four in Leslie Osborne, shout out, Ellie Wagner, shout out, Daniel Slayton, shout out, Brandy Chastain, shout out. Like having these faces wanting to bring a pro soccer team to the Bay Area and having the money behind it with Sixth Street and really just popping the lid off of expansion valuations and investment in an expansion franchise. So having them kind of like, take the slow route to build the roster, I was like, come on, I need to see the international move. I need to see the big signing player. And then they made not one, but two, but three. So there's multiple players at this point that you look at this Bay FC side and you're just kind of like, okay, they're cooking and we're going to see, how it tastes come opening day. So I'm here for Bay FC. I think of the two, I would rank them a little higher in terms of readiness to take on the league.
Bay FC is going to be dangerous this year with the players that they have, which with the style Albertine Montoya wants to play. He was very open with us on expansion day interview saying, this is how I want to play. I want to keep the ball. I want to attack. I want to possess with a purpose and move into the attacking end and score a lot of goals. And our best defense is going to be offense. And we're just going to, we have a clear game plan as to what's going to happen. My biggest question mark with this Bay FC side is with all the internationals they brought in, with their number 2 draft pick in Savvy King at 19 years old, with so many people that they have on this roster, only 12 of them have ever played in the NWSL before. And this is a difficult league. And he has also never coached in this area before, and with 14 teams and with how much parity there is in this league and how competitive it is day in and day out, and you're an expansion side, we just keep layering on the difficulty levels for this Bay FC side, which makes me have some pause into how lethal they are actually going to be and to start this season. I mean, Darian, how difficult is it to have a team that is made up of so many players that haven't ever played in this league before?
Yeah, it's tough. It's a long season. No game is easy. You don't have the game where you're, oh, we're going to rest our starters and we're going to give everyone else an opportunity. And no, you never know what's going to happen. NWSL's chaos, as we've said numerous times. Who knows what's going to happen game to game? So it's a tough league to join. It's a tough time to join this league in particular because it's so competitive. It is up in the air of who's going to make playoffs, who's going to win the championship. We never know. The unexpected always happens in this league, which I think is the beauty of it. But it's, I think the biggest challenge for coaches and players maybe coming in that are unfamiliar with it is learning how to manage your energy, sustain it for this long season that's going to be really difficult. No game's easy. And just maintaining that consistency throughout the year in your style of play, in how you manage your players, how you approach game to game, I think, and the cadence of going from game to game, I think a lot of coaches actually struggle with that are new to the NWSL. From my experience, when I've had a first-time coach, overtraining is a big thing that happens going from game to game throughout the year. So I hope, I think Bay obviously has the right investors, the right owners, that they know this and they put the right people in place to make those decisions. But it's going to be a big learning curve. I wonder if that's probably maybe some adjustments we'll see throughout the year. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think Albertine Montoya is going to do really, really well in this league.
In talking with some people close with Bay FC about this preseason, they mentioned how there was already some adjustment with some of these players coming in, and the consistency and the level that was expected of these players in the NWSL and at Bay FC was different than anything that has ever been asked of them before. When you go from being the star player on whether it's your national team or your club team where you played prior, and you can turn it off and turn it on at leisure, and we're down a goal, okay, let me turn it on, let me score 3 here, and then we'll get back into the groove of things and I can take a break. There are no off moments in the NWSL, and some of these players at Bay are learning that throughout the preseason that they're playing with Bay and their trainings, and realizing that if they're not tracking back to make a run, their teammates are getting on their back. Their coach is getting on them saying, hey, what are you doing? You can't take a moment off. And hopefully some of that leveling out has come in preseason with some of these players, because their skill is there and their talent is there. It's just having the consistency every single time you step on the field. And in the NWSL, if you take a moment off, teams are going to capitalize on that. Really experienced teams.
I think that's something that's a narrative that's existed in NWSL. There's always like this almost like this window or period of grace that, teams try to give some of their international signings, because they notice that when they get there that maybe there has to have that period of transformation where they kind of get locked in and familiar with the NWSL as a league and the style of play that they're going to kind of face in and week out. So I'm sure that's going to be something that Bay has to cope with and deal with, having signed so many international players. But I don't know if that makes the possibility any less brighter of what's in front of this team. Whether it's, like I said, like whether it's going to be from Castellanos or Oshuala or Princess Marfo. Right? I know there's some unknowns right now with the international break with Rachel Kumananji, so maybe we'll get an update on that. But even so, I mean, that's like 4 internationals off the bat, right? That we're just, that we could rattle off for Bay FC. But I think overall, when we look at Bay FC, I like the structure of the roster. I like the balance that they have within it, whether it's those international players who have NWSL experience, or even these, we're talking really young players. I mean, like, we haven't even mentioned Savvy King as their top draft pick. Yep. Like, this is a young player. What is she going to bring in this first year for
Alex Luera in the midfield for this Bay FC side? I think she's going to be a big leader and an engine for this group. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with both of you. I think the biggest thing, you're right, coming in from international, where if you're not playing the top 3 or 4 teams, you can kind of get away with not having your best game. It's going to be a big lesson. I think it's going to be a lot of stamina that they need to build coming into this, but this is also why Bay attracted these players. That's why this league is
Right.
attracting huge players like this, because they want the competition week in, week out. They want the unpredictability of what a team's going to do, how they're going to approach the game. That's why the NWSL is the best league in the world, because it's so competitive from the bottom to the top. You never know what is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited
And
to
you
see
can't
Bay
fall
this year.
asleep. Yeah. Yeah,
Nope.
I definitely am too. You can't fall asleep against a player like Sydney Leroux. She's going to have a quick one too and get in behind you. So Bay FC will get their first test against Sydney Leroux and Angel City in the NWSL Sunday, March 17th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. That match happening in LA. So not only does Bay FC start this weekend, they get to stay on their same coach, which, hey, not that bad for them. The other expansion side, Utah Royals, they are led by former United States women's national team legend, NWSL legend, Amy Rodriguez as the brand new head coach of Utah Royals. They are joining the NWSL. They've had a lot of interesting acquisitions in this offseason, whether it was the expansion or free agency or the draft. Throughout the NWSL draft, Utah Royals had a lot of picks during the draft.
So
I can't
many.
remember off the top of my head,
So
but they
many.
definitely had the number 1 overall pick, which was Allie Sentnor out of North Carolina Courage, just a sophomore after she finished that year, the midfielder going to Utah. Darian, what do you expect from A-Rod and this Utah side in their first year in the NWSL?
Watching A-Rod as a little girl and having the honor to play with her and also do a coaching license with her, which I was like, I don't want to coach. She wants to coach. She has the passion for it. Her identity of how she was as a player, I think, is what we're going to see in the way this team is going to play. It's going to be very aggressive, attacking, very high on transitions. I think we're going to see a lot of goals from this team. She's a first-time coach. It's a different hat she's wearing. I am intrigued to see the tactically how they're going to play. I envision it being very attacking wise. I'm interested to see this formation because it is an interesting group of players that she has together. A lot of people connected to Utah, a lot of BYU, a lot of former players that have some experience but maybe never got the same shine in their previous teams that they'll get at Utah. So I think that there's a lot of players that are hungry to show that and come out and be a staple on this team. There's a lot to prove here. But I'm intrigued. I think Utah also, there's still a lot of questions. A lot of this I just don't know. I'm very curious to see how A-Rod does as a head coach with, just the things that happen throughout the seasons with injuries. How do you manage that with international windows? How do you manage these players being gone? Do you have the depth to make up for these players that will be gone for long periods of time? I'm very interested to see, and I wish her the best. I love seeing, like we said, with Bev Yanez, former players in the league now becoming head coaches, because especially players that are a little bit older like they are than me, they've experienced the NWSL from the worst to what it is now. So I think they have a really high standard of what this is going to be, and I'm excited to see it actually on the pitch this weekend.
Amy Rodriguez at Utah is almost the opposite of Albertine Montoya at Bay FC. She's kept her cards very close to her chest, not giving up a single inch of what she wants her team to look like, how they're going to play, anything. She hasn't given anything to the media. Sandra, does that make it a little bit more interesting to watch Utah in this opening weekend?
Sure. I think another side of that coin, you could say, it could also make it a little bit more worrisome going into this weekend. I think when they're bringing in expansion franchises 2 at a time. So you have someone else to compare yourself to sometimes when you're coming into the league now. And I think what we've heard out of Bay FC, what Albertine Montoya has presented to we're at whatever arena, whether it's been with media, in interviews with their supporters group, season ticket holders, like events to energize fans ahead of the season, has not shied away and in fact has been pretty brave in speaking to how they want to play this season and how they want to execute things on the pitch. And I think when you pivot to Utah Royals, that hasn't existed. We haven't heard that same energy from Utah. So yes, on one side of the coin, you could say, oh, very coy, perhaps gamesmanship, playing things close to the chest. That's all good and fine and dandy. But this is the big leagues. There is no shame in talking about building up, generating buzz and excitement around your team, about how you want them to play, etc. And I just haven't felt that from Amy Rodriguez in this Utah Royal side. Maybe they're just going to want to be about the talk. Maybe they just want to tune in and watch and see it for ourselves. And that's fine too. But it makes me wonder if we're going to need to watch this team, like I said, in these opening weeks and start asking questions like, where's the identity? What does it look like? What's the game plan? And if you're not seeing that, then you start asking even more questions about, how the team is navigating their reintroduction to the league, because there's also that as well, right? They're coming in as an expansion side, but this is also a team that has had some history in NWSL already. So what are they trying to put together to look like in this new era of, what Utah Royals football is? What are they going to do to define that, maybe even separate itself from its past a little bit? So I'm eager to see what it looks like, because again, it just felt like at one point they were just racking up players. Now it's like, how's it all
without really a rhyme or reason either, right?
Exactly.
It was like, oh, you're getting very different styles of players. Yeah.
People are trying to find like the trends. It's like, okay, well, here's a bunch of Utah, here's a bunch of BYU players, and here's a bunch of players with ties to Utah, and then it's like, okay, here's some players who have had some.
It's like the New York Times mini puzzles connections. Like sometimes they just don't make sense at all, and you're like, okay, I guess this goes together. We'll see.
Is that also part of the game plan? Is it just to keep everybody on their toes?
Maybe.
I don't know.
Do you guys think it's a lot more pressure because, do you think that maybe there's a lot more pressure on A-Rod specifically with it being the second time that it's in Utah, and all eyes are on Utah because of the lack of information, honestly.
I do think there's a layer of pressure there. It's unfortunate, but I mean, this, like, it all goes back to what we said. Like, this actually isn't the first iteration of this team, and maybe there is that pressure to kind of come out the gate and have a little bit of success and to kind of bless this new version of the Royals.
There's a lot of pressure, I think, on the Royals and Amy Rodriguez. Yes, they are keeping the history of the club. I don't think that's where the pressure comes from, frankly. I think the pressure comes from looking back a few years at Angel City and San Diego and how they were expansion sides in this and how well they did in their first year. San Diego specifically, their second year, they won the Shield. I think that puts pressure on an expansion side. I think Amy Rodriguez being a first-time head coach, that's a lot of pressure on her. Amy Rodriguez being back in Utah where she played her club ball, that's a lot of pressure on her. There is a lot of pressure that's coming from outside sources, even within, right? For this club to say, hey, we want to be really good. That's a lot of pressure. And I don't even think the most of it is coming from the fact that this club has history of winning. It's the fact that there are being so many questions thrown at them and they're not answering any of them. That I think makes the pressure a little bit heavier even throughout this season. Well, we'll see. Utah, they get to host first. Darian?
Yeah, well, it's also tough, I don't know, as a player and you watch your head coach go and talk to media and say, well, I don't have a style of play yet. Is a little concerning to me. I don't know, if I was one of those players that got brought in and my coach is saying that, I'm like, well, you didn't. There was an intention in bringing me.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just what's being said to the media, and it's a different story to the players and their internal staff.
As a coach, you can fluff. You can say soccer terms. Yeah, we want to score a lot of goals. We want to defend. We want to make it, like, right? You can just say fluff.
Yeah.
You don't have to say I don't know.
That's why it wouldn't give me a lot of confidence from the player side watching my coach say that, because then I'm like, well, what are my qualities do you want what of my qualities did you have the intention of developing or bringing to this team or highlighting in our style of play that makes sense for why I'm even here?
No, that's a good show. I don't think it's unfair to kind of bring that player perspective, when it comes to kind of previewing the team ahead of their game this weekend. Again, just because especially like some of the players that they've acquired, yes, there's these players who have had some NWSL experience in front of him. But there's also some, they had so many of these draft picks, there's a few of these players who that they're getting even in their second or third years as NWSL players, maybe were on teams where they did not get a lot of minutes. And now they're here. And you like, how does that, how did you put it all together? What does it look like? I know Ali Setner was a player that we had all rated pretty highly going into that draft. What is her role going to be, with this team, and what support are you giving, those young players? So there have been good things that Amy Rodriguez has said on record. Part of the pitch was to make sure that they wanted Utah Royals. They wanted that franchise to be a place that for players, if you want to come and continue your development and get better, you're going to want to come to Utah. That was part of the pitch. So maybe we'll
honestly,
see it
as a young forward, I would think, I want to go learn from Amy Rodriguez. She's one of the most prolific goal scorers to 100%. Do it. You want to learn 100%. Specifically from her. But how that translates into a game when you can't just play offense, you have to play defense, and you have to manage a game, and you have to play against big opposition, and you have to go on the road, and you have to take long trips to the East Coast for 2 weeks at a time. There are so many factors that come into it. It's not just scoring goals. That helps.
I think it's going to be a good first matchup for Utah.
Very.
You got one expansion franchise coming in here. Again, we're saying we're giving the grace, we're giving the respect. We're saying they're just playing things close to the chest for right now. And then you've got a Chicago side that is also stepping into its new era of things. So I think it's a good first match for Utah.
That first test for both of these sides, Utah and Chicago, Saturday, March 16th, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. It is being hosted in Utah, a huge moment for Utah to bring women's soccer back to that area. A lot of pressure for sure on those sides. We did it, ladies. All 14 teams, we went through them. We talked about them.